Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have other folks coming in, so we will get started. We really appreciate the time. This is another one of our Thursday's Edge webinars, and so we're really excited to have you with us today. Most importantly, we also are excited because MBDA, the Minority Business Development Agency, which is part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, is funding our upcoming Thursday Edge seminars. And so the funding for the CARES Act is provided from them through a grant from Minority Business Development Agency. So again, just really thankful to have the support and hoping for a great conversation today. I wanted to let you know, as always, that you can reach us at usblackchambers.org/CARES-Act, so that if you have any questions or issues, you always have an opportunity to ask us for that. So with that, we will get started. My name is Elisa Joseph, and I am Director of Programs for the US Black Chambers. We're also excited because very soon, the work that we do through our Community Economic Development Corporation, or our CEDC, is going to be full front and center of some of this work as well. And so if you see information coming from USBC, CEDC, or US Black Chambers, just know it's coming from us in totality. So we have an opportunity to expand resources, be able to reach you via social media, e-blast, and other digital channels. And so excited about the opportunity to expand all the different ways that you can get information about moving through this pandemic. I'd like to introduce to you Jody Friend. Jody is the President and CEO of JLM HR Consulting, LLC. She's a human resource executive with 30 years of experience. Her passion is providing HR solutions to her clients, helping them navigate the complex maze of human resources through compliance process and people. Jody and her team provide global consultative services for early stage ventures, nonprofit organizations, government contractors, and privately held companies ranging in size from 5 to 750 employees. She's an active member of many prominent HR organizations, including the Society for Human Resource Management, or SHRM as we call it, both on the national and local level, as well as the HR Alliance. And she's also certified by the Society of Human Resource Management as a senior certified professional. So join me in welcoming Jody to our conversation today. Hey, Jody.
Hi, Elisa.
How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have this conversation with you and members of the U.S. Black Chamber. It is an honor. Thank you.
Well, I'm so happy that you are able to join us today. We know that when we think about HR issues, usually we're thinking about, staffing or benefits or, that sort of thing. But with COVID, it's been a little bit trickier because we really, while workplace safety is always top of mind, we're in a different realm right now. So knowing that, this was never easy to begin with as we talk about HR, in your practice, what are you seeing? What are the challenges that are being faced by your clients? Can you give us a couple of examples of those?
Yes, I could probably give you quite a few examples of the challenges that companies are facing because of COVID-19. Of course, from a compliance standpoint, because that is something that we always help our clients with. Earlier this year they passed the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act, and that of course comes with its own set of provisions that aren't easily understood. And so that's, those are the things that we're helping our clients address so that they can make sure that they're complying with the parameters of the law as we know it today. It is a temporary law. that provides for some paid time off, either because of family medical leave or because an employee or perhaps a family member is sick due to COVID. So it's very specific to COVID. There's also this whole challenge of now virtual and telework. And so many companies had to pivot quite quickly to be able to adapt to that. And then we're also finding that this is not an easy transition for employers, for some employers, and for many employees. So coupled with now having had to transition to a virtual work environment and doing telework, we now have the conundrum added to that of childcare challenges. Also, some folks have lost their jobs. Some businesses are going out of business. There are so many, Elisa, we could probably just, do a webinar on and just talk about those challenges as well, but those are a few.
Yeah, it's very, very tough. And again, a topic that is not necessarily always top of mind for people when we think about human resources, but everything you talked about is really the whole gamut, because anything touching an owner or an employee's life really impacts the company and really impacts it from an HR perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, we're having to, encourage, managers and employees alike to communicate more. Something
Absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about workplace safety, right? Usually when we think about workplace safety, it's sort of a given, right? We for the most part, we always feel like when we go into work, the building that we're in is safe. We've got a variety of restrooms or elevators or stairs, like everything is safe no matter what we're doing, even the food that we're eating would be safe, right? And so now it's a little bit different. When we used to think about OSHA in particular, we used to think about construction sites, right? I gotta think that it's now figuring into workforce safety as relates to this pandemic. So when we think about, airborne, surface, close proximity contact, what are some of the new things that you're counseling companies and businesses on?
Well, first and foremost, Alyssa, we are counseling our clients to take a look at their environment and to make some assessments about what it is that they need to do. We're encouraging them to work with their landlords and also to read up on the guidelines from the CDC as well as OSHA, because there could be some things that are very specific to their industries that they'll need to comply with. And now these things need to become a policy and a procedure. So once you've identified, what you need to do, do you have to go out now and buy personal protective equipment, masks, gloves, face shields, hand sanitizers, all of those things that you may have to purchase, air filters, things like that. You now need to have a policy and a procedure for how you're going to implement that, and then how you're going to maintain the standards that you set up for your particular organization. So, you've got to have detailed and regular cleaning procedures. When someone comes to visit your location, how are you going to handle visitors? What's the protocol? So those things have to be taken into consideration. And of course, taking into consideration your specific type of business. So if you're a restaurant, that's going to be different from a regular office space, because, say for instance, restaurant or retail, where you're constantly having people come in and out. Now that, we're able to reopen at some levels, what about, having the signs on the floor, signs on the wall about standing, 6 feet apart? What about, do you have hand sanitizing stations set up in your particular location, especially for restaurants? Are your wait staff wearing masks and gloves? And those are things that you now as an employer have to provide, to your staff. It is now your responsibility to provide those things. So, so what about, again, the physical distancing, now I think we probably won't be doing handshakes anymore, those kinds of things. And what about those of you that perhaps have office space? Will you be doing in-person meetings now, or will you pivot to doing just more, teleconferencing, whether it be via Zoom or, Google Meetup or, whatever the technology platform, is best for you. So those are all of the kinds of things that you have to consider. Also, you have to consider, are you going to do any kind of health screenings for your employees when they come into work? There are some, think about a hospital situation, or maybe even a restaurant situation when your employees are coming in, they're going to be handling food and interacting with customers. Are you going to be taking their temperature? And then if you are going to be taking their temperature, there's certain protocol around that. So, so it's a lot of things that you have to think about. And, if you're in an office setting, are you going to perhaps have the individual hand sanitizers on each person's desk? If you were providing, say, utensils and things for employees to use, in a lunchroom and things like that, are you now going to, you have to think about, you're not going to buy the individual, you're not going to buy the forks and the spoons and things, even though they may be plastic, they need to be individually wrapped now. Right. So you have to think about, there's so many things to think about, but that's what, that's the conversations that we're having, with our clients.
Yeah. I think that's right. I mean, it's funny, even when I go to a restaurant, if I'm getting a utensil that's not wrapped, I'm pretty much not using, I'm taking out anyway. I'm pretty much going home and using my own fork and knife and spoon, right? So, and that's why we have professionals like you to be able to help. I think a lot of times businesses don't think that they can afford to have an HR person either on staff, but I think the ability to have a consult and have a company like you be on hand for those types of things. Everything doesn't have to be, there can be retainers on a certain amount of months or time that you use it, but I think this time is really critical to really have those consults with professionals like yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. We can certainly, we can have a one-off conversation, and you never have to call me again, but hopefully, we're there to, support you in any way that we can. And of course, we have some situations where it's literally, it's on call, pay as you go. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to have this big, huge budget to have HR support.
That's great. That's great. So, some of us are fortunate to work virtually. However, for small businesses in the service fields like food, healthcare, beauty, entertainment, just as you were describing, a lot of that business is conducted face-to-face. Let's talk about employees and owners. We talk a lot about customers. How should owners and employees, what techniques are out there for them to keep themselves safe during this time?
Yes, absolutely. Well, we keep hearing, whether or not, masks are appropriate or not. We can all have our personal opinions about that. But yes, so masks, gloves, again, setting up that protocol that's appropriate for your particular location. I encourage employers, again, to, go to the CDC website to see specifically what they're advising about your particular industry. Go to OSHA website as well to find information that they are sharing about your particular industry and what protocols you may want to take in place. But a couple of things that employers can consider, consider reviewing and modifying the work schedules. Not everybody can be in the same place now. So where maybe you had 20 employees coming in at one time, And again, because of some of the restrictions that we still have, especially when it comes to restaurants and some of the retail outlets, you may have to take a look at modifying schedules, for your staff. Maybe you modify your store hours, or your restaurant hours to be able to accommodate and make, accommodate your staffing requirements. Perhaps you need to consider also what happens if an employee is sick. They say, I think I may have COVID. You have to think about how you're going to handle that situation. You're not going to let the employee come in, but you need to have a process and a protocol for when an employee does call and say, hey, I think I may have COVID. What's your process, for that? What's your protocol for that? Determine how you're going to handle if an employee is not wanting to come back to work because they are fearful of contracting COVID, because you're in a public space where you have people coming and going. Your employees may have fears that they're bringing. So how are you going to address that? It's very real. So I think as employers, regardless of the industry that you're in, if there's a need for some of your staff to be in the office, then you have to think about the safety of not only yourself, but of course your staff. And so, there are lots of things, again, to consider, but certainly the CDC, I'll say it again, the CDC can give you some guidelines. We can give you some guidelines, as well as OSHA can give you some guidelines, again, about your very specific, situation.
That is great. Let's switch topics a little bit. I will be honest, it's not hard for me to live in my bubble right now. I kind of enjoy my bubble. That's not the case for most people. Most people are very challenged about having to stay in place, not being able to go all the places that they used to go. It's becoming quite of a civil rights issue to some degree right now. I also think part of that stems out of what is our state of mental health in dealing with this, right? When you don't have control over something, then, the tendency is to blame other people, to sort of figure out, how you're going to navigate it, to become much more introverted or much more isolated. I have friends who, they're not able to go see family members or able to really have those interactions. And as human beings, we need social interaction, right? So let's talk about mental health. It can go anywhere from being isolated, having to deal with caregiving, whether that be, with an aging parent or a child. Now, lots of folks are teaching their children at home. There's an upside to that, but definitely if you're trying to work, you're trying to make sure your child is in school. Yes. It's a really tough thing. Yes. To do, and all of this going on while you might be doing virtual Zoom calls, or you're trying to, get a project out, or if you do have to leave the home, you've got to get things done before a certain shift before you go out to work. What recommendations do you have to help employees, to help business owners, help managers deal with this mounting pressure?
First and foremost, there's got to be communication. And so communication between, the business owner, and again, depending on the size of your business, if you have managers, there has to be communications between the two parties, between, the business and the employees. And let me just tell you, if at all possible, those conversations need to be individual. And the reason I say that is because everybody's situation is different. Mm-hmm. And so you may not, you may have an employee that's dealing with, elder care. So that support mechanism or system that perhaps needs to be in place for that particular situation is not necessarily the same as someone that has small children, and especially in that, say, 5 to maybe 10-year-old range, mm-hmm. where they're taking online classes, but they need some supervision. And so situations are going to be different. So I would encourage, to the extent possible and to the extent feasible, that you have one-on-one conversations, with your staff, and find out what their needs might be. Now, are you able to accommodate each and every individual situation? Perhaps not, but at least you'll have an understanding of what your employees might need or what kinds of situations they may be facing. So again, depending on what comes out of that conversation, perhaps there can be a modified schedule. I don't think that there's no more 9 to 5. I think we have to stop thinking about it in that way. Start thinking about what work needs to get done and then how that work is going to get done. So that's a little easier, like you said, Alyssa, especially for those of us that are able to work from home, do the telework, that might be a little easier. But when you're having to go into into an establishment to perform your duties, again, what support from an employer perhaps can you provide to be able to make sure that your staff can come into the workplace if they're required to do so? So those conversations have to be had, I think, on an individual basis to the extent.
And I can imagine that might be a little tough, right? We create HR policies to really be that guiding force for everyone. But when you're having individual conversations, you're trying to keep a team, if you've got team members, you're trying to keep a team environment. If you're looking at folks individually, that does get tough with trying to navigate what you might do for one vis-a-vis another. How do you keep that camaraderie between employees in the mix of that? Because really what it means, just like when I think about masks, I think about the general welfare of everyone around me. What does that mean when you're working with team members where everybody has to really, at this point, kind of think about everybody else around them, and someone else's need might be different and someone may not have a need at all. But how does that not spark any level of resentment or in terms of, trying to really manage a team?
You make a very valid point. And, again, we are in a very unique, situation, very, challenging times right now. So I think we have to get a little bit more creative, think a little bit more outside the box when addressing these types of, personnel issues. Because you're absolutely right. And in some cases, some policies may have to be temporarily discontinued just to get us through this phase of where we are right now with dealing with this pandemic. So I don't want to say, throw, protocol to the wind, but in some cases, employers may actually have to do that, at least for a temporary time. And so one of the things, again, if you have the opportunity, you can do a survey, and there are ones that you can set up on your phone, and they can, be sent out via text to the employees. You can gather information about that way and perhaps get a general idea of what are the issues that are affecting your staff. So it could, maybe there's, 50% that have the childcare concerns. And so maybe you can start to have a conversation about how can we support, individuals with childcare needs. Maybe the concern is around, the fear of coming into the workplace. And so, take a step back as a management and hear what your employees are saying and try to get creative around how can we make our workplace as safe as possible and communicate that, to your staff. So I really think a lot of things are changing about our workplace that we just weren't prepared to address, but we're being forced to address right now. And I think there's going to be some flexibility, especially when it comes to treating perhaps one employee differently than another employee. I think there's going to be a little bit of flexibility, at least temporarily, to be able to address those individual needs.
Yeah, I think those are great points, particularly the surveys and stuff as it relates to consensus building, right? Getting everybody kind of on the same page and understanding that, we're all in this together, and, I'm going to be able to take care of your needs just like I'm going to be able to take care of someone else's. We all have to really be joined at the hip.
Absolutely.
this work.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think, constant, frequent communication, that needs to happen on a regular basis because things may change from week to week,
Mm-hmm.
especially in a retail environment or a restaurant environment, depending on how the business is doing, schedules may have to change from week to week. So, there needs to be some patience, some flexibility to try and understand that we are all, dealing with, varying levels of challenges. And if your company is fortunate enough to have an employee assistance program, we affectionately call it an EAP program, that please encourage your employees to take advantage of that. And we're talking about mental health, but there's also maybe there's some financial concerns that your employees are having, and that of course can affect your mental health. But EAP programs offer a lot of services. And so if you're fortunate enough to have that as part of your benefits package, please encourage your employees to take advantage and explore all of the services that an EAP has to offer.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We were touching on this a little bit earlier with businesses that are leasing space.
Mm-hmm.
I always think about a business who may have gone into a lease in January, right? And they're
Right.
paying rent now, and they're not there. What are you advising on two fronts? What are you advising companies do, either relative to lease negotiations, number one, but also relative to the building? So, usually with the lease, there's a certain amount of services that come. They may pick up the garbage at the end of the night because there's a central place for trash. But now we're concerned about what are the HVAC systems like? Well, how are they working? Are we able to get air from the outside into the building? Because most of our buildings are now have windows that you don't open anymore, right? So there's lots of these small concerns that you don't, as much as you might try to keep your employees safe within your own space, you don't have that capability of being able to do everything because you're leasing and it's dependent on what the landlord does. So what are your thoughts around that? What can businesses and owners do?
Yes, have a conversation first and foremost with your landlord and find out what they're doing. And there's a lot of information about what commercial landlords should be doing, also from the CDC, as well as OSHA. There are guidelines that they have put out that building owners need to take, that need to implement. And so I would say initially have that conversation with your landlord. What are you doing? What can we expect? What kind of protocols are you implementing? Are they putting up signs in the lobby? They should be. Are they taking precautions to make sure that the elevator buttons are being sanitized properly?
Mm-hmm.
They should be. What about, what are you going to do as far as enhancing the cleaning and the sanitizing? Are you now able to provide us with more than just say trash pickup? Are we able to maybe even contract with whoever the landlord brings in to clean to perhaps, pay a little bit more to have that extra cleaning? But if you don't have those conversations with your landlord, you won't know. But as an employer overall, you're responsible for your space. So wherever your employees, are required to come, into the workplace that you're leasing, you're required to also take those same and similar kinds of steps. So perhaps you need to put in, a hand sanitizing station in common areas.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you may be leasing an office space, but your office may have a kitchen, as part of what you're leasing, an individual kitchen, may have an individual, bathroom. So what are you doing to make sure that there's proper cleaning protocol taking place? I know personally, for the office, that I lease, that, we have a small kitchenette. And so, we have to take precautions to wipe everything down, clean everything, at the end of the day and during the day now, where before we weren't thinking about it until the end of the day, right? But now, you've got to have, you've got to have the Clorox wipes and the hand sanitizers and all of that readily available all throughout the day. And then, of course, what if you are in a situation where you have, again, if it's a retail outlet or a restaurant, do you have, are you maybe using any kind of these newfangled ultraviolet sanitizing, wands, or, some are even going to the extent where they actually have this, in the entryways, as you walk through, that it's kind of scanning you, to see whether or not you have, COVID or anything like that. And of course, those are a little bit more extreme and probably more expensive options. But, are you considering those kinds of things? Do you have the thermometer? I know recently I was, in the doctor's office, and, they take your temperature as soon as you come in, you register at the front desk. Oh, and by the way, they actually now are maintaining, when you normally you could just walk right up to the desk where they check you in. They had a table there, so you could only get so close.
Wow.
And then they give you a pen to sign in, and when you use that pen, you have to put it in the dirty pen. Right. So they're keeping the pen that has been used separate from the pen that hasn't been used. So there's all kinds of things that you want to think about and probably, should implement. Again, every precaution is probably not enough.
Yeah. I do have my temperature gun, and I work from home, but, my kids are coming through, somebody's temperature is getting taken. So.
Yeah, exactly. And wiping down after every visit,
Absolutely.
Especially in a doctor's office, they have to wipe down the chairs. When I go to my hair salon, she does the same thing. She's got to make sure she's, the capes now are in plastic. After she uses them, she puts them back in the plastic, and before she uses it for the next client, she wipes down the chair, and of course, you can only have one person in.
Yeah, it's very, very different. Very, very different.
Very different. And then, I see her, not that she wasn't doing it before, but I see her, now just doing, it seems like even more with, making sure that the combs and things are, in the barbicide. And she has a certificate that she's gone through training specifically for COVID-19 sanitation.
That's a really great point. I think sometimes, as you think about resources, there are those kinds of things that are out there. But again, if you don't know, and that's why we want to have this conversation, if you don't know, that's a really great point. Even though it's in a specific industry, there are lots of things that are out there now that, we may not have even thought about before, but you can be trained in it. You can get consult in it. So, everything you're sharing with us is really, really great advice. I do want to remind people that you can submit a question in the chat if you want to talk to Jody. So we would love for you to do that. I'm going to shift gears again, talk a little bit about performance management reviews. I don't know what, luckily, like I said, I don't necessarily have to worry about that anymore as I may have had to in the past. But I think about, end of year is coming. What is it going to look like for people who have gone through this year, have really probably worked most of the year at home, right? We have been in a society that has really been about FaceTime as opposed to about Zoom time. What is performance management looking like? What are reviews looking like during this time? And what needs to be taken into consideration in doing reviews? I think the good news is that I think there might be a higher level of trust than there used to be, with this sort of sense that I had to see you every day to really that you were doing what it was that you needed to do. I think now people are starting to understand people are grown-ups and they can do their work on their own. What do performance reviews, what will they look like this year? And also when I think about businesses, you have revenue has changed quite a bit. in terms of either how you're making it or where you may need to go. And you have to have a much more frequent eye on everything. So as opposed to maybe quarterly, maybe you're looking at everything monthly or weekly now. You're not waiting until the end of the year. So what is it looking like on both fronts?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked about that. So one of the most surprising things, Alyssa, that, as I'm talking to my HR colleagues and, I'm participating in various, groups to have conversations around, what other HR, folks are doing and what companies are doing, dealing with everything COVID, as I like to call it. Believe it or not, there are some companies that are actually doing away for this year. They're not even doing performance management reviews.
Wow.
They are actually ditching them. So because everything is in such upheaval right now, so they've actually ditched them. What I'm also hearing, from some of our clients as well as just, my colleagues in general, that they are resetting goals, right? And you mentioned already that they're short-term goals. So what's going to be accomplished this week? What's our focus this week, right? Rather than what's our focus for the next 90 days or 60 days. What's our focus for this week? And communicating what needs to get done this week. So those are the conversations that I'm hearing. And so what I'm also finding is that managers are having more frequent conversations and giving feedback in the moment. Because again, anything that we are doing is going to probably most likely have a deadline associated with it. And so there's going to be more frequent check-ins about where are we with this deadline and are we going to meet this deadline? And what do we need to do if we need to shift that deadline? And so I think we're hearing that companies are just really looking at the short term, rather than the long term. Unfortunately, for those companies that perhaps have been affected more so on the financial side, they're not going to be, giving merit increases. I'm hearing that from some of our clients already. That, unfortunately, there won't be merit increases, going into 2021. And so, and then I also suspect, although I haven't heard it specifically, there may or may not be bonuses as well, end of the year. So, companies want to preserve as much cash as possible. And, just again, trying their best to maintain and stay in business. I would encourage, employers and managers to be very specific about, again, what tasks need to, be completed, and then make sure that the information that employees may need to be able to complete the task is readily available. So I think many of us use, systems like Dropbox and Google Drive and, all of those types of online tools that we can access documents easily. But if you haven't implemented something like that, and you are working remotely, this is a great time to think about implementing something like that. Dropbox can be free. And if it meets your needs to have a free version of Dropbox, you can certainly use that. But then, of course, there's a paid professional version of that. There's Ignite. Oh my gosh, again, there's Google Drive. There's quite a few, platforms out there that companies can use to be able to make information readily accessible. And then, of course, again, I cannot stress this enough, is you may have to redefine the rules of engagement, right? Especially if you're working remotely. So if you're having a all hands meeting with your staff, does everybody need to be on camera? Is that, so that's something to take into consideration. And so I think for many companies, they're saying, when we have a meeting with all of our employees, we want to see you. We don't want you to be hidden, not have your camera on. We want to see you for this meeting because it's important. We want to make sure you're doing okay. And I think that's also our way of kind of checking in with you. If we're at least able to see you physically, not in person, but we can kind of take a temperature check. Do they look okay?
Yeah.
Are they doing okay? Perhaps if somebody's looking, feeling, looking a little sad or appearing sad, maybe the manager can reach out to them one-on-one, after the meeting, just do a check-in and see how they're doing. So I think, again, there's got to be some flexibility, some pivoting, and some shifting, and also just to know that it's okay. It really is okay.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, hopefully the work will still get done. Your company will survive this. And it's just about, getting creative and being a little flexible and being understanding, because some employees' roles may have shifted a little bit, right? Because again, the work has to get done. And if somebody is sick or someone is not able to, because maybe there's the childcare and they had to reduce their schedules, that work has to get done by somebody. And so maybe, maybe more, I've, taken on more work, so to speak. And so, but maybe it's something that I hadn't done before. So be patient if you're shifting roles with an employee and saying, hey, I'm going to put this new thing on your plate and they've never done it before. You can't expect it to be perfect. Give them guidance, give them coaching, and help them, to kind of navigate through that new task.
So as we wrap this up, Jody, I want to just have you do a couple things for us. The first is love for you. We always try to end with giving, 3 tips that our business owners can use, and our leaders. We have chamber leaders on the call as well. Can use. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this question of you from an HR perspective. We are somewhere, I saw the number today, 198,000 people have left us since March. Some of those people I know we've worked with, some of those people are family members. Before you go into the tips, how should managers be helping people through that? What is the recognition of a team member who was with us in February and is no longer with us now? What kind of guidance are you giving?
Yes. Give employees the opportunity to grieve. And, again, be patient, try to be as flexible as possible. I think this whole pandemic, to some extent, I think we're all grieving the loss of how we used to do things. Our lives have been turned upside down in some ways, and things are not the same. And so I think to some extent we're all going through that grieving process of how do we rebound from this. And so no 2 people are going to go through that process the same. And so I would encourage managers to just perhaps be a little more patient with their employees, try to be a little bit more understanding, and do some reading about the grieving process so that you understand what your employees may be experiencing and what you yourself may be experiencing through all of this. I mean, just because we're business owners and employers, we're human too. And so I think that we're all going through our own challenges, whatever that might be, for you. But I think it's important to just, have that patience and just try to be more understanding.
So what top 3 things should we take away today?
Well, I think, get creative, really think outside the box, be flexible, and, stay focused. And, I really, truly hope that, anyone listening this afternoon, especially if you're a business owner, whether you're a new business owner or you've been in business for a while, that, reach out to your business partners, reach out to the chamber for support and guidance. And, I just wish, everyone, all the best and continued, success as we all navigate through, this pandemic.
Well, we thank you so much. And before you go, I do want to share a slide with everyone. Jody does a weekly newsletter, comes out from her company, which I think is something that If you like to subscribe to it, we certainly can arrange for that, but it's called HR Dialogue, and there's just some really, really great tips in that. She has also graciously offered to provide all of you with a 15-minute free consult. So when you email her, just give her the subject line of a follow-up to this 917 webinar, USBC 917 webinar, 15-minute consult. And any issues that you might have, she will take the time to talk you through them through this 15-minute dialogue. She's also, after we end this, probably within another week or so, you're going to get a resource document from Jody as well, courtesy of JLM HR Consulting. Again, it's just going to give you some of these tips, some of the websites that she's talked about as reference points will be in there, but sort of just kind of an FAQ, one-sheeter that'll be really helpful to you and to your business. Jody, do you want to add anything else to this?
So, yeah, so, again, I take advantage of the free consult. And again, we're all, going through some challenging times right now, but we can help one another. And I'm more than willing to help my fellow business owners, navigate, through some of these challenges. So please reach out.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you. And thank you for the resources that you offer. And again, I hope everyone who is viewing today, as well as those who will be on demand later on, will feel free to reach out to Jody and to reach out to us if you have other HR concerns. So thank you so much, Jody, for your time.
You're welcome, and thank you.
All right. And someone has said great information, so that's good to know. I'm glad you're enjoying this. I do want to just share a couple of things with you that are coming up. We have through American Express, and it's the coalition of Back to Black Businesses group, of which U.S. Black Chambers is part of. There is a $5,000 grant opportunity that you can compete for through this program. And so WeBackBlackBusinesses.com is the site. It opened on the 15th. It closes September 21st. Please, please, please register for that. They will be selecting somewhere around 250 to 280 businesses randomly to be selected for this grant opportunity. So Kev, if you can go to the next slide, just to give you a little bit of an understanding of what they're looking for. You can, if you do have employees, or if you do have a 1099 consultants who work with you, that qualifies in this 3 or more employee requirement. You have to have a physical location in the US. You can only receive one $5,000 grant. We want you to prepare yourself in advance. So what we're doing is we're giving you kind of all the key areas that you need to have in place when you submit the initial application. So your EIN number, your legal structure, your address. Next slide, please. Whether or not you're a 51% owner as a Black business. There are ineligible categories which are listed there. I'll highlight a few of them. You can't be a government agency, you can't be a gas station, travel agency. You can see some of the ones that are listed. You use the program URL that I mentioned, which is WeBackBlackBusinesses.com. Put in your information, complete the narrative section, and upload your W-9 and any MBE certifications that you have, and you're on your way for this program. So we really would love for you to take advantage of it. We want you to share it with people, business owners that you know, so that we're able to get them some help if they're selected as part of this program. And then the next program I do want to make you aware of is Monday. We're doing some sessions with Google. Google has partnered with us to provide business resources that you can use today. And that session will be, as I said, Monday, September 21st at 3 p.m. I'll send out a separate link to you if you haven't received it already so that you can register. You're going to a landing page basically and registering your information to just be a part of the conversation. You'll be able to ask questions as part of it, and we will continue to promote their products and services even after this particular webinar. So just stay tuned for more information you'll continue to see. Next, we have just our normal webinar series that we're doing. This one we've moved now to once a month on the third Thursday of each month. So look out for what's coming for October, November, and December. We also have our conference. I did forget to put our conference information in here. So I will send that out as well. But if you go to buyblackconference.com, BYBLACK conference.com, we'd love for you to join us October 14th through the 16th for our sessions there. And then we also have our monthly Chase for Business Advancing Black Entrepreneurs session that we do the first Thursday of every month. Our next session is actually going to be next week, September 24th. So if you're interested, please go to usblackchambers.org/advancing-black-entrepreneurs and register to participate. Finally, as always, you can get more information and updated resources. We are taking great pride and pains to make sure we're getting you as much information as we can to help you navigate through and over this pandemic, helping you plan for the future. So visit usblackchambers.org/cares-act / to attend the weekly webinar series. And so with that, we thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, please stay safe.